Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. First of all, I may cough a little bit, I may have a few sniffles today. I am down in the central part of North Carolina and it is the worst pollen season I have seen in decades. We had a very mild winter throughout most of the state and most of the pollen hasn't even fallen yet. I mean, the loblollies are just getting ready to drop their pollen. And if you've ever been in the central part of North Carolina, eastern part of North Carolina, you know, loblolly is like the most common tree. On any given acre, there's probably going to be about 1,000 of them. Loblolly pines, well, they're just getting ready. The long leaves to drop their pollen. The dogwoods have their pollen out. I think they said actually mulberry was particularly bad for pollen this year. But I mean, it's a yellow haze everywhere. It looks like you're in a fog of yellow. Literally like you're in a fog, but it's all pollen. It's covering everything, and it's, let me tell you, it's tough. It is tough. I didn't have the herbs with me I needed when it hit me last week, I guess 2 weeks ago it started. I got the herbs now. They're helping. Over-the-counter antihistamines are not helping a bit. I actually really had a bad reaction to the Actifed. They've reformulated it. That used to be like the one, OTC, over-the-counter antihistamine that worked for me. And they have changed out, I guess, the pseudoephedrine to something else. And I would always take an Actifed and a Benadryl because that combination would really knock out the allergies. Did that and passed out and started throwing up. So I can't take the new version of Actifed. But the herbs are starting to kick in. I really won't make that mistake twice. From now on, I travel with what I need. So, I hope you're having a more pleasant spring wherever you are. If I sneeze, if I get into a coughing fit or something, I will try to cut that out. But you may hear me sniffle a few times. Can't help it. Sorry about that. But before I get into this week's show, and this week's show is going to be really interesting. I'm going to talk about Monarda. That is bee balm or bergamot. It's a mint, but I did not include it under last week's show on mints because it is very unique. It is a very strong herb, and it has a really important role in Native American and Appalachian herbal medicine. So we'll get into that. I want to mention a couple of things. First of all, there is a new group. It is called Christian Herbalism. And, of course, I wanted to be involved in that. They have a course, an online course you can take in herbal medicine called Christian Herbalism. They're going to be having an online conference, and I've been invited to be a speaker. That will be in August. I'll keep you updated on that. On their website, they have a forum. You can sign up and talk with other Christian herbalists. That's great. That's absolutely what I have been hoping to, hoping to encourage, through my books and through my writings, kind of take herbalism out of the New Age woohoo, Wicca and witchcraft and all that, neo-pagan, whatever junk they're coming up with, and put it back where it belongs, which is firmly within the tradition of Christianity. Because, you know, before Christianity, you had Greek herbalists, you had Jewish herbalists, you had Egyptians and Syrians and all that. By the advent of Christianity, all that herbal medicine became the only medicine. I mean, obviously, it's the only medicine there was. Medicine spread throughout the world by Christian monks and nuns and priests. They founded monasteries, and every monastery had an herb garden. It was actually law under the Holy Roman Emperor Charlemagne, but most of them started even before then. I mean, like the Benedictines, Saint Benedict's main message, I mean, it was pray and work, but first care for the sick. All the hospitals, all the medical clinics that spread throughout Europe, starting in Rome, going up through Central Europe, all the way over to England and Ireland, and throughout the entire world, the Mediterranean, Spain, and everything, were Christian monks and nuns practicing medicine, and it was herbal medicine. Well, that's kind of that area of the world. Of course, there's the great tradition of Muslim herbal medicine. They really love Galen's work. Again, Galen comes out of that Greco-Roman tradition, so there's actually a huge amount of crossover. The first actual medical college, the first university, was founded by a Christian, a Jew, and a Muslim that all each brought their herbal traditions with them, but it was founded in Italy and is very much part of the ancient Greek and Roman herbal tradition. And then, of course, you've got India and China, and Native Americans had a good, strong tradition of herbal medicine. But honestly, a lot of Native American tribes, because they were more isolated, didn't have a lot of ailments. And so you may find a tradition in a certain tribe where they only used a handful of herbs. Monarda would have been one of them. So that kind of brings us back to Monarda, but I wanted to just tell you, it's called the School of Christian Herbalism. The website is Christian-Herbalist, I think, .thinkIFIC.com. Anyway, just Google Foundations of Christian Herbalism. The person who runs it got in touch with me on MeWe, so there's a great group called Christian Herbalism on MeWe, by the way. If this is something that interests you, I post on there all the time. That's another way you can communicate with me, but you can find a lot of good, like-minded folks. Now, on another social media site called Gab, which is not quite as nice a place to be as MeWe. There's actually a lot of neo-Nazis and such on there that I avoid, and whenever possible, unfriend them, block them, But MeWe is actually a really great alternative to Facebook, and I think Gab will get there eventually. The groups are actually probably better on Gab. They're actually a little more active than they are on MeWe. So you just kind of have to take the good with the bad. I mean, it's free speech. Sometimes you're going to see things that offend you. There's certain people you're not going to want to follow or let follow you. Just know that going into it. But the Christian Herbalist group on MeWe is fantastic. The people that run it are great. They're friendly. They keep a really nice environment in that group, and I highly recommend it. But on Gab, a fellow got in touch. I post a lot on some homeschooling groups on there. Well, he's actually a tutor. And, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I'm dyslexic, which makes doing math almost impossible because I invert numbers. You can give me, the same set of numbers and ask me to multiply them, and 5 different times I'm going to come up with 5 different answers because I cannot keep the numbers in the right order. It's a challenge as an author, but I've learned to get around it. You cannot put numbers in context the way you can put letters. So anyway, this guy is a mathematician, and he said, would you take a look at my YouTube page? And if you find it helpful, mention it. Well, it's great. I mean, I'll just tell you, this guy is fantastic. I mean, I like to learn the concepts of mathematics, even if I can't make them work on paper. Actually, I think if I had had this guy as a teacher, I probably could have done math a whole lot better. So, and for someone like me, that is actually saying a lot because I can't do math very well at all. The YouTube channel is Speed Learner, and I think that's youtube.com/user/Speed Learner. Check this guy out. He's really good, really good. And he is on Gab. I don't know if he's on other social media. If you want to find him, it's just Speed Learner is his username. And he has, I love all the old, Greek and Roman, mostly Greek stuff when it comes to, philosophy and herbalism and medicine and, all kinds of, stuff. Euclid, always had somewhat of an interest in Euclid. I read some of the foundations when I was in school. I could kind of get the concepts, but I just couldn't put it on paper. And this guy actually has a whole series, the Speed Learner guy, on Euclid. And I watched the first few videos, and I mean, I got it. I could actually see I could actually see him do what was being, explained. And it was like, wow, okay, that actually really does make sense. So I just wanted to mention those two things. Now, before I get into the herbs, I'll do the recipe of the day. I right now have some pizza dough rising. I love pizza. Okay, I was really, fortunate, very blessed to have grown up where I did in the mountains of North Carolina. There were tons of Italians, and I mean tons. Not only do we have ski slopes up there, and a lot of people come from all the Alpine countries. I mean, I grew up with Swiss and French and Germans and Austrians and I mean, the whole region, but lots of Italians. One of my best friends is straight from the mountains of Italy. Great chef. He was actually the professional chef on the Love Boat, the actual Love Boat, the show about for a while. There was a great pizza place growing up, Mr. Sali. I learned a lot about pizza from him. Got another friend named Rama. He's got a pizza place. So we got all that. That's the actual, from Italy people. And then we have tons of Italian Americans. Essentially, the mountains of North Carolina have always been a hideout for mobsters. And I don't think that's a secret, actually. Al Capone had his base of operations for a while, at least, in Johnson City, Tennessee, which is like 20 miles from where I live, And it was utilizing the moonshiners in the Appalachians to make the liquor, and then he would take it up through Chicago from Johnson City. We've always had mobsters. I mean, some of them really scary people. I mean, honestly. And they're just like, them. It's like living in, it must be like living in New York or New Jersey. It's like, yeah, that's so-and-so. He's a whatever for the something family. Don't say anything about it. It can be a little odd. But then a lot of them are, of course, not mobsters. But most of them, we'll say 99% aren't. And of course, I wouldn't have even a church to go to had it not been for the Italians. They did come to the area and put the money in and founded the Catholic Church that I attend. Grew up with a lot of Italians, a lot of great people. So I love both authentic, regional Italian food made by people from Italy. I know Sicilians, I know people from Rome, I know people from all over, Umbria, etc. I also really love the Italian American food. And so when I make pizza, sometime I'm going to do a traditional margherita pizza. What is margherita pizza? That's just a pizza made, with some olive oil and garlic, of course, and I usually do a little sprinkle of oregano. A lot of people say you shouldn't use oregano on margherita pizza. I don't care. I like it. Fresh tomatoes, fresh basil, good mozzarella, put it on there and just bake it. And a lot of times, I like just a real Italian-American kind of New York style pizza. I love pizza. I make them all kinds of different ways. I do a white pie. I do a spinach and feta pizza with tomatoes. I mean, good stuff, right? So I usually, I say I bake pizza about once every week or two. And right now I've got some pizza dough rising. So I just want to give you that recipe because down here where I am right now, you cannot buy a decent pizza literally to save your life. There are many places that are not like how I grew up in a, resort town in the mountains of North Carolina that had a really unique mix of people. There are a lot of places where you cannot get a decent pizza. I won't name names, but let's just say if all you got in town is Pizza Hut and Domino's and all that, forget it. You're not getting a good pizza. Maybe I did name names. Actually, Domino's really upset me. The last time, a few years ago, I actually tried to order from there. They said order online, and they sent my order to a different store and then wouldn't allow me to transfer it to the store I went to that was actually the one that was supposed to. Anyway, they made me really mad, so I don't mind talking a little trash about them right now. And of course, Pizza Hut's just so sweet. I mean, the sauce is like barbecue sauce, you know. You want to make a good pizza, and to make a good pizza starts with a good crust. Now, you can get the super high protein, you know, pizza flour that they're going to use in high-end or like Roman pizza restaurants. Okay, you can do that. Okay, or you can get King Arthur bread flour. It is very comparable. No, it's not perfect, but it will give you a good crunch and a good chew, and that's what I'm looking for in pizzas: a good crunch and a good chew. So, get your all-purpose flour and get the one you like. Like I said, I particularly like King Arthur all-purpose flour for most of my baking, everything but biscuits and such where you want a softer flour. It's consistent, and it's not, what do they call it, bromelated. That's a process that is essentially a preservative process for flour, and I think a lot of people that are told by doctors or believe that they have gluten sensitivity may be reacting more to the bromelization process than actually the gluten in the flour. Regardless, if you use a sourdough starter, it's going to pre-digest those gluten proteins, and you're probably going to have a little bit better gut health, a few less issues. Now, if you need to use like some kind of other flour that doesn't have gluten, okay, but you know, most people have gluten intolerance not because of genetics, but because they've been prescribed too many antibiotics and they're eating too much pasteurized, processed, artificial food, and they don't have good gut health. If you have some good real sauerkraut, if you drink some kombucha, if you have some kefir, whatever, a lot of fermented pickles, get that gut health back, you're probably going to have a lot fewer issues with gluten. And that I think is especially true if you use a non-bromelated flour and you use a sourdough starter, or what I do, which is a hybrid sourdough starter. What I started doing a few years ago, and I wrote a whole article about it for the Grow Network, you know, when COVID hit, there was no yeast available. I had a one packet of yeast left. I don't remember if it was Fleischmann's or Blue Star or whatever. And where I was, there was a lot of mold in the environment, and I couldn't get a good sourdough starter going without a lot of mold attacking it. I mean, you do not want a moldy sourdough starter. If it turns black or green on top, you have to throw it out. And I tried 2 or 3 times. I'd get my good starter going, and just the molds that were so prevalent in that environment were just, you know, feeding on it before I could use it fast enough. So I found the old advice from George Herder, which is to keep your sourdough starter in the fridge. And then I started thinking kind of about how yeasts were actually isolated by the Fleischmann brothers 150 years ago or so. They took yeast and they figured out how to dry it and preserve it and package it. Before then, people were just using basically sourdough or beer yeast, a little bit from each batch. And I've always liked to, especially one of the things I learned from the great pizza makers, you know, is to always take a little bit of your dough and stick it back. It's called a biga or a poolish, depending on what language you speak, and it will mature and it will add flavor. You always pull a little bit out, mix it in, let the dough rise, pull a chunk off, stick it back, right? In traditional baking, you didn't have commercial yeast. That was your starter. That your biga or your poolish was kept in a cool place, like in the cellar, in water so it wouldn't dry out. Well, the next batch of dough I made to make some bread, I just put my flour and yeast and salt and water together, and after it rose, I took a chunk of it, stuck it in a jar, covered it with water, and put it in the fridge. A week later, I baked again. That's what I used. And it rose. And it rose. I mean, every single batch. I didn't have to buy yeast anymore, and I didn't have to keep a sourdough starter like a pet on the counter. I just kept this in the fridge. And it works fantastically. Every now and then I will add a little yeast to it. I'll get a packet of yeast and I'll add maybe a fourth or a third, just to kind of keep it fresh. But over the years, I've been using the same dough starter now for over 3 years. It's gotten that excellent sourdough, um, cheesy flavor. I guess that's the best way to describe it. A sharp, rich, interesting flavor. So whenever I make my pizza dough or I make my bread, I'm using that biga or poolish or dough starter or whatever you want to call it. After it rises for a couple of hours, pull off a chunk, stick it back in the jar, cover it with water, sit it in the fridge. You have to burp the jar for a couple of days, and then it just kind of falls apart in there and it stops bubbling so much. So that's how I started. And that is absolutely how I would recommend you start yours, because you're going to get better flavor. Every single one you bake is going to taste better. It's going to taste more like you got it from a really good, old family Italian restaurant, because that's how they do it. And it's better for your health too. And you're going to save money because you don't have to buy yeast. Yeast has doubled in price in the last year thanks to Biden. And flour's gone through the roof. My gosh. King Arthur bread flour that I used to get for $3.99 a bag before Biden is now $5.99 for the same amount. That's crazy. It's not like there's less wheat on the market. It's politics, just pure politics. But anyway, here's what I do. I start with 4 cups of all-purpose flour. Now you can do this by hand. It's especially good if you got a bread kneading bowl. Use it. Otherwise, I got a stand mixer that was given to me as a gift. I don't need to knock myself out kneading bread. So I'm going to give you these instructions for a stand mixer. Just know that it's going to take a little longer if you do it by hand, and you're going to have to develop a feel for it. So 4 cups flour. I take my dough starter out of the fridge about an hour before I'm ready. I stick it, I burp it a couple of times. I stick it in some hot water in the sink or in a bowl and just basically try to bring it to room temperature. Sometimes, if it seems a little sluggish, if it hasn't really, when I burp it, if it isn't really producing a lot of air, a lot of carbon dioxide, I'll add maybe a half teaspoon of sugar just to kind of stimulate it a little bit. Not always necessary. I didn't do that today. So I'll take my dough starter out, get it to room temperature. I will then add 1.5 cups of total liquid to the flour. The dough starter is sitting in water. I use a jar, so actually the amount in the jar is 1.5 cups of water. So it's real easy, that just, piece of cake. Because the dough starter is made of flour, you may want to add a little extra water. Sometimes I'll go as high as 2 cups. It really depends on the humidity of the day, but warm water. So 4 cups of flour, 1.5 to 2 cups of warm water. If you get a little too wet, don't worry about it. Just throw in some more flour. No big deal, really. I like a higher hydration dough than most people call for. That's just the way I learned. So I'm going to go probably closer to 2 cups of warm water, but I'm going to give you a recipe that says 1.5 cups of warm water, and you just figure it out, right? Then 1 3/4 teaspoons of non-iodized plain salt. I don't care if it's sea salt, I don't care if it's table salt, I don't care if it's Himalayan rock salt. Whatever salt you like. Kosher salt is always a favorite among chefs. It's very consistent, it's got a good texture, but I'm telling you, you can use the cheap stuff, just make sure there's no iodine in it. Start mixing it, pour in about a tablespoon of olive oil, and let it come together. And then if I'm in the stand mixer, I'm going to knead for about 10 minutes. If I'm kneading by hand, I'm going to knead for about 15 minutes. Just developing the gluten structure. Once you get it together, form it into a ball. Cover it with, usually I would just use some inexpensive oil, whatever I got. Just kind of coat it, roll it around in a bowl, put a lid over it. Usually I just actually sit a plate on top of my stand mixer bowl, sit in a warm place, let it rise for 2 hours. What I actually do is I'll turn the oven on to about 150, let it come to temperature, turn it off while the dough's kneading, and when it's ready, I just stick it in there for 2 hours. The dough doubles in size, punch it down, I usually form 3 dough balls out of that. I can make 3 pizzas out of that 4 cups of flour. So if you want less pizza, you're going to have to cut the recipe down a little bit. That's not math I can do in my head right now. So 4 cups of flour will give you 3 pizza doughs. Let it go another hour, and then take a dough ball and pat it down, put a little flour in your hand so it doesn't stick, make your pizza crust. If you want to get fancy, you can toss it. I can toss dough a little. I'm not that great at it. I usually actually just take a pan and press it out. I always used to toss the dough and make a nice, beautiful round pizza, nice thin crust, and cook it on a pizza stone, a stone in the oven. And they kept breaking. And I got really frustrated about it. I said, forget it. From now on, I'm just going Sicilian style. I'm baking my pizza in a pan. I sometimes miss the stone-baked texture. Not enough to actually keep buying those stupid things. They're ridiculously expensive. And, you're better off. If you do one on a grill, that's okay. I like a pizza stone on a grill. It gives me a good texture. You can actually cook your pizza directly on the grill. Great. It will not fall through or stick. You don't even have to worry about that. So I might use a pizza stone outdoors, and if I do, it's probably going to be more like a couple of fire bricks. I mean, those things are just way too expensive for them to keep breaking, and they do. They just, it's a bad investment. So you can bake your pizza on the back of a cast iron pan. Just turn it over in the oven, pop it on there. You're good to go. Like I said, for margarita pizza, you're just talking fresh tomato, basil, mozzarella. Always crush a little garlic up and put it on the dough first with a little olive oil and just put everything on top of that. A little salt. You're good to go. I like a little oregano, like I said. For like more of a New York style pizza, what I do is I get my pan good and hot. Get some olive oil in there. I put in fresh or dry herbs, whatever I have on hand. Plenty of oregano, basil, usually a little, just maybe a pinch of thyme, just a pinch, and that's really optional. I like a lot of crushed red pepper. Get that going. I will take lots of onion. I like a lot of onion. Slice thin and sweat it down in there, salt and pepper. Once the onion is translucent, maybe 3 cloves of crushed basil, so like maybe one good medium-sized onion, really sliced thin, so the onion almost like dissolves in the sauce. You have no texture of onion. I don't want to bite into a crunchy onion in my sauce. The garlic goes in when the onions turn translucent, so it doesn't burn. Get that good and cooked, kind of push it to the side. I take some crushed tomatoes, either fresh or peeled and whatever, or from a can. It does not matter with tomatoes. Put in a little bit of it and let the tomatoes cook in the oil and turn a little dark, and stir everything together. It's almost going to make a paste. Salt and pepper to taste, always. Then add the rest of the tomatoes, and then let it simmer. And that's it. You get a really spicy, punch you in the face, real like what you'd be looking for in a really good New York style pizza, right? So that's the sauce. If I'm doing that kind of style, I will just, again, on the crust, I'll do a little olive oil after I've, shaped it out. Do a little olive oil. Put the sauce on kind of thinly. You don't want to go super heavy on the sauce. I usually use the back of a spoon, just kind of, spread around. Mozzarella, I may throw a little Parmesan on there. Pepperoni, mushrooms, olives. I love olives on a pizza. Like I said, a lot of times I'll do spinach and feta. But that's my pizza with a sauce. It's the basic sauce I'm going to use. And it is better than any pizza I can buy. So that's your recipe for the day. You can, of course, get very creative with pizza. If you do a barbecue chicken pizza with pineapple, just don't tell me about it, okay? I actually really do like anchovies, so my taste can be a little different than most people too. And I like a ton of mushrooms. I love mushrooms on a pizza. I love olives on a pizza. I like a lot of spice too. I use a lot of crushed red pepper. All right, y'all, so let's get into Monarda. Monarda, as I said, is a mint. It is one of the prettiest wildflowers in America. The stem is square, as are all members of the mint family. The leaves are opposite. Last week I said alternate. I meant to say opposite. It has a little bit of a furry texture to it, kind of a little bit hairy on the stem. And it comes up, the flower looks almost like echinacea or coneflower, right? Except that it has tubular petals going off in every direction like a Medusa's head full of snakes, right? And it is beautiful. It will be purple. It will be red. I have red bee balm that grows wild all around my property, and I absolutely love it. It's also called horseman. It's called bergamot. That confuses people because you've got a tea that's called bergamot, you've got a citrus that's called bergamot, and then you've got this herb. So Monarda is really preferred. because, it's more official and people actually know what you're talking about, right? There are many varieties. Wild bergamot is also called Oswego Tea. Um, there is a lemon bergamot. There is a white basil balm that is in the same family. We call it bee balm on the mountains because bees love bergamot. It's one of their favorite flowers. Hummingbirds absolutely adore it. Hummingbirds are amazing to watch. Around my house, each hummingbird will make a circumference around its territory, and you can almost set your watch by when that hummingbird will visit a single Monarda plant. They will put their little beak down in those tubular flowers and suck out the nectar. They'll hang out for a second and then go on to the next flower. And they come by so regularly, you could literally set your clock by them. They're absolutely amazing to watch. Now, interestingly, even though bee balm or Monarda or whatever you want to call it was known to Europeans, there's very little mention of it. You won't find it in the ancient Greek and Roman writers. You won't find it in monastic medicine. You will find it in Polish herbalism. According to Sophie Hodorowicz Nab, I think that's how you pronounce her name. I grew up with a lot of Poles. I could never pronounce their names properly. Okay, the only one I got. You remember the old show Barney Miller? There was a guy named Wojo Hoeks. They said it enough. I remember Wojo. Anyway, it was a pretty good show. Pretty good show. Barney Miller was kind of liberal, but they had some really good characters on there, like Fish, the old Jewish guy, and the black guy that wrote the mystery novels. There was like this real smart detective who was sort of, I think, a character for a lot of the detectives we see on, some of the better shows, like, Murdoch Mysteries or, something like that. Sort of a Sherlock Holmesy kind of guy. Anyway, funny, very funny show, very well written. If you're under 40, you have no idea what I'm talking about, so I'll just move on. But anyway, Sophie Hodorowicz Nab says that bee balm was a very popular tea substitute in Poland. Poland has a very remarkable history, actually. At times, it was probably the most advanced civilization in all of Europe, and at other times, it was dirt poor, and Soviets or Russians were trying to exterminate them. The Nazis. Anyway, wonderful herbal tradition, one of the richest herbal histories, and excellent food. Let me tell you, as much as I love that Italian food, as much as I love my French and Southern and Irish heritage, I can eat some sauerkraut and pierogies. I mean, I can eat some pierogies and some borscht, and that's good stuff. That is excellent. They have a soup called a stew. It's a hunter stew called biga. Oh my gosh, it's good. That's the same thing as, I think it's actually the same name as the dough starter, biga. Yeah, I think the Polish hunter stew and a dough starter actually have the same name in two different languages. I just thought of that, and I may be wrong. Anyway, when we get to really the first mention of Monarda in British herbalism that I can find was from Miss Grieve, 1931. So really late in the day. I mean, they had as many Native American herbs in the British herbal pharmacopoeia as they did British herbs. And she said, so far Monarda punctata is considered the only indigenous plant to North America which can be looked upon as a fruitful source of thymol, though another American swamp plant closely related, Monarda didyma, and scarlet Monarda also yield a similar composition. Now, thymol is very important. It is antiseptic. It is antiviral. It is a hot essential oil, and that's really obviously you would think, well, it comes from thyme. Well, it does. It's actually stronger in Monarda. So that's really one of the signature characteristics of this plant, and one of the reasons it's such a good cold remedy and good for so many things. Let's see. She said medicinal uses. Let me see if I can get to that. She writes at great length about the delightful fragrance, and really it is one of your very best smelling wildflowers and wild herbs. One of the reasons it's so popular as a tea, by the way. And interestingly, she said it delights in light soil and full sun. Where I live in the mountains of North Carolina, I got 3 foot deep humus. It rains 270 days a year, and my bee balm grows at the edge of the woods and partial shade. So I think that's highly uh, variable. I guess we would say variable. I'm just going to go ahead and get to some of the Native American use. One of my favorite Native American herbals is from the Muskogee tribe. Like the old Merle Haggard song, Muskogee, proud to be an Okie from Muskogee. Well, Muskogee is actually a Native American tribe. They have a great herbal tradition, and if I remember correctly, aren't they based in Florida or Alabama? Not Oklahoma. Anyway, I'm not sure. I can't remember that off the top of my head. Tismal Crow is what you would call a medicine man. He is a Muskogee herbalist, and he wrote a very, very good herbal. It's just a few plants. Like I said, a lot of tribes don't have a lot of herbs because they just didn't need a lot of herbs. But bergamot, that Monarda, that's probably one of their main ones. Far more so than in the Cherokee or Catawba or Lumbee tradition. He called it sweet leaf. That's another common name. He said is one of the Muskogee 7 sacred herbs. As with all other sacred plants that we will discuss, it seems to be almost a panacea or a cure-all because it will fix so many problems. He said sweet leaf is an excellent example of the doctor's signatures. The Latin name wild bergamot is Monarda fistulosa. Fistulosa refers to the little tubes or fistulas in the flowers. The doctor's signatures tells us that this plant has to do with diseases of the tubes. But here it is more specific to the ear. Another signature of the plant is the color purple. Things that are colored purple have to do with the nerves, passions of the heart, or the human spirit. In this case, it tells us that it's a nerve tonic. It's also fantastic for the lungs, speaking of the tubes. He actually gets into that quite a bit. The ones that are actually sort of speckled with a white, almost it looks like a powder or a mold, are one of the very best bronchial herbs known to man. He listed Monarda as useful for burns, and they have a really interesting tradition. I told you it's a hot herb. They actually would, I think if I can remember specifically, they chew it up and then put it on a burn. And it's a combination of saliva and the plant. I have not tried it. Like I said, it is a hot herb, but that's how it's used, if I remember correctly, by the Muskogees. Definitely worth looking into. He had a really interesting story about that. But, for most of us, what we're really looking for is lung infection, tuberculosis, dermatitis, rashes. He said it was good for bird sickness, which is actually a sickness you can get from chicken poop and such. So that's the antiseptic, antibiotic, antiviral, antibacterial properties of that thymol. He said it was good for your nerves, depression, anxiety, insomnia, hyperactivity. It was good for calming anger and violence. The Muskogee believe there's such a thing as corpse sickness. Now, that means if you're around a lot of dead bodies and such, that you would get sort of a disease of the spirit, a depression, sort of. And Monarda is specifically good for that. He said it was good for depression caused by being around death. Also, they use it in a remedy for severed or damaged nerves. If you have any interest in nerve damage, healing nerve damage, highly recommend Tismal Crow, Tismalcrow, his Muskogee Indian herbal book. Fantastic. He said it was good for burns, sunburns, fevers. That's a very common use of it to help with fevers. Blood infections, syphilis, gonorrhea, to relax and soothe sore muscles, appendicitis, used in love potions, of all things. For syphilis, we said that. Teas for sipping, added to smoking mixtures, used as a smudge, that's like an incense essentially, for sore throats, upper respiratory infections, as an expectorant, in soaps, etc. So yes, basically a panacea. Now it was, and it still is, quite used by the Cherokee, though not anywhere near to the extent, so far as I know. Now, I don't know all Cherokee people, but I know a good bit about Cherokee herbal medicine, and it's much used, but I have not seen anyone use it as much as the Muskogee. The horse mint, which is one variety, they use it as a poultice for headaches and for colds. The Monarda didima used to stop a nosebleed. Sniff and infusion made of the crushed leaves. This is from a Cherokee herbal, by the way. It's a sort of classic book from the 1930s. To stop nosebleeds, dampen the head with a drink of the cold root infusion. A hot leaf tea brought out the measles when everything else failed. Monarda fistulosa, which is the one that's such a great lung herb in particular, very used by the Lumbee Indians. The Lumbee tribe, they're a Catawban tribe, so you get the Catawba tradition, Waccamaw, they're a mixed tribe is what I'm trying to say. You get Catawba, Waccamaw, Haliwa-Saponi, I think, PD, the various tribes, and then the Chicora. Very, very strong Chicora influence. Chicoras are more common in South Carolina, but anyway, they also mixed in with a lot of Scots-Irish settlers, Africans. Really interesting herbal tradition, Lumbee herbal medicine, and there's a book called Herbal Remedies of the Lumbee Indians, and I probably mentioned before, the Lumbee tribe is really what I grew up with, and I have a lot of relatives that are part Lumbee or full Lumbee, depending on who you ask. And so it's always very interesting because, this is the eastern part of North Carolina and upper eastern South Carolina. And, as much as the Appalachian tradition is my native herbs, so are the herbs of the coastal swamps where the Lumbee live. They used Monarda fistulosa, let's see, a warm poultice relief headache. Let's see, they said the principal use of horse mint, no, so this is the horse mint, this is not the fistulosa, was external in its pure state, was thought to be a vesicant or blistering agent. Remember, I told you it's a hot herb, so I really thought that was kind of odd they used it for burns in the Muskogee tribe, but they do have a specific way of doing it. They're actually kind of drawing the heat out of the burn. I won't get into all that, but that's actually a pretty common old home remedy, a folk remedy in several cultures in different parts of the globe, different parts of the world. Different people, unrelated, believe that you pulled the heat out of a burn. I think I would probably use aloe before I would use a blistering agent, but I don't know. I don't know exactly how they do it. I'd have to see it, and if I saw it, I'd probably believe it. I'm going to put it that way. Okay, so they said used as a blistering agent or vesicant. Lumbee healers were careful to dilute horse mint with water, soap liniment, or olive oil in later times. However, some Lumbee also viewed horse mint as an expectorant, which it is. That's one of the ways I use Monarda, and a minagogue, which means it brings on menses, and a diuretic to treat urinary disorders. Horse mint or Oswego tea was applied as a salve, I guess, to treat backache and chronic rheumatism. That to be diluted, it's still going to be warming. It's going to be like, a liniment that you might, Tiger Balm or something, right? Love Tiger Balm. I haven't had any of that in quite a while. I used to use that all the time when I was doing martial arts. I did it Kung Fu and the fighting style of Tai Chi Chuan for several years, and you get pretty torn up, and you run and get the Tiger Balm, and it was great stuff. Really great. I remember one time I landed a kick wrong and dislocated a toe. I mean, really broke it pretty bad. And that Tiger Balm, boy, it made a world of difference. I mean, it was so, it split open and started bleeding. I mean, I hit it that hard in a wrong way. A leaf top tea was used by the Lumbee. We usually just say lum, by the way. If you're a lum, you say lum. I may have a tiny bit of Lumbee blood. I'm not going to claim to be lum, but I certainly grew up in the area with majority of the population was actually Lumbee Indian or black. There weren't a whole lot of white folks where I grew up in that part of my life. A leaf top tea was used by the Lumbee to treat weak bowels and stomach. The Lumbee also used Oswego tea to treat female obstructions. Some Lumbee healers suggested tea of the leaves and roots be wiped on the head in case of a nosebleed, so similar to the Cherokee. Occasionally, a healer would use a hot tea to bring out measles, similar to the Muskogee, and to treat heart trouble, treat fever, to encourage a restful sleep, to relieve flatulent colic, and to sweat off colds and flus. And as I said, it's very good for helping to break a fever. Horse mint was also used long ago as a treatment for smallpox. So speaking of long ago, let's look at King's Medical Dispensatory of 1898, when the Monardas were very respected as herbal medicine among white folks as well as Native American. They recommended as stimulant, carminative, sudorific, diuretic, antiemetic. A lot of big words. Stimulant, you can pretty much figure stimulates circulation, especially. Carminative, it settles the stomach. Sudorific, it can help with sleep. Diuretic, it takes off that excess fluids. Antiemetic means it helps with nausea. And the infusion or essence is used in flatulence, nausea, vomiting, as a diuretic and suppression of the urine and other urinary disorders. Warm infusion is stimulating oil. Warm infusion is a stimulating diaphoretic, means it helps break a fever, and has acquired some celebrity as an emmenagogue, meaning it brings on menstruation. It may be drank freely, the tea they're talking about. The oil is extremely sharp and pungent. That's the blistering agent. And applied to the skin excites heat and redness, and if too long or too closely applied, will produce a painful blister. Strong stuff. Really is strong. That thymol is very strong when it's in that concentrated. It is used like peppermint oil internally and is employed locally in embrocations to relieve pain, like I said, like a liniment. The full-strength oil may be used upon neuralgic parts, so good for neuralgia. The Monarda dilyma and Monarda fistulosa may be used as substitutes for the above. So King said they were fairly interchangeable. Plants for a future lists lemon bergamot as an edible, using the leaves raw or cooked as a flavoring in salads or in a tea, in a soup, a pleasant lemon flavor. So I have never tried, I've never tried the lemon bergamot. I'll have to grow it because I love all citrusy tasting herbs. I eat a lot of fish, and I can't have fish without something that tastes like citrus. It just, to me, that perfects the flavor of any kind of seafood. I don't care if it's fried shrimp or oysters. I'm going to throw some lemon juice or something, a lemony tasting herb on there. I just think it's fantastic. Or have a lemony wine like a Sauvignon Blanc or something. They list the white basil balm, fresh or dried leaves and flower heads brewed into a tea, said to be excellent when mixed with other teas. And then they get into, medicinal use of didyma. Bergamot is often used as domestic medicine, being particularly useful in the treatment of digestive disorders. The leaves and flowering stems are anthelmintic, carminative, diuretic, expectorant, febrifuge, rubefacient, and stimulant. I think we've covered all those words except anthelmintic, which means it helps get rid of parasites, and rubefacient means reddening. As an infusion, it is used in the treatment of flatulent colic and sickness. It is also used as a diuretic to treat urinary disorders. The leaves can be harvested before the flowers, or they can be harvested along with the flowers. Can be used fresh or dry. Used as a rubefacient in the treatment of rheumatism. So just like the lumbies were doing, and the Muskogees and all that. Medicinal use of Monarda fistulosa, wild bergamot. Bergamot. I keep adding an M in there, an N. It's Bergamot. Wild bergamot was often employed by several Native American tribes who used it to treat a variety of complaints, but especially those connected with the digestive system. It is still sometimes used in modern herbalism. It really should be much more used. And if you want a pretty wildflower to grow in your garden, you cannot go wrong with these. They are absolutely gorgeous. One of the absolute prettiest wildflowers I've ever seen. The leaves and flowering stems are carminative, diaphoretic, diuretic, and stimulant. I think we know all that. Settles the stomach, breaks a fever, etc. Infusion is used internally in the treatment of colds, catarrh, that's congestion, mucus essentially, headaches, gastric disorders, aching kidneys, reduces fevers, soothes sore throats. So it's a go-to for sore throats. Externally, it has been applied as a poultice for skin eruptions, cuts, etc., as a wash for sore eyes. The leaves can be harvested, etc., etc. They can be used fresh or dry. The plant contains bergamot oil, which can be inhaled to treat bronchial complaints. The leaves also contain thymol, an essential oil that can be used to expel gas from the digestive tract, as well as many other things. They list mint leaf bergamot. They list plains lemon monarda. That's specifically very good as an antiseptic and for coughs and fevers, colds and flus. Let's see, horse mint is probably the most common. They say it was traditionally taken by several Native American tribes to treat nausea, vomiting, and to encourage perspiration during colds. It was applied externally as a poultice to treat swelling and rheumatic pains, of course. Nowadays, it is primarily used to treat digestive and upper respiratory tract problems. The leaves are carminative, diuretic, emmenagogue, rubefacient, stimulant, stomatic, and vesicant. An infusion of the leaves is used to treat flatulence, nausea, indigestion, catarrh, congestion in the upper respiratory tract, and to induce sweating and promote urination. The herb is principally used as a rubefacient. Applied as a poultice, it helps lessen the pain of arthritic joints by increasing the flow of blood to the area and thereby hastening the flushing out of toxins. So, several varieties of Monarda, all of them good. Some of them a little stronger than the others. It's fun to do a basically Native American herb. I had my main herb teacher that when I started as an apprentice at the age of 15 was Cherokee. I grew up with the Lumbee tribe. I don't even know, there were 5 Native American tribes in North Carolina, and they've always been a part of my life. Actually, one of my cousins is I think was the chief of the Chicora tribe, distant cousin, like third cousin or something. So anyway, I guess it's very commonplace for me, but it's something that isn't for a lot of people. A lot of people don't have a lot of association with modern Native American Indian tribes. They think of them as the old Indian on the commercial would cry over the litter on the side of the road, or something from an old Western movie. But these are usually Trump voters who drive pickup trucks and love the Atlanta Braves, and also love to hunt and fish and have a little knowledge of their native plants if they were taught to have, because we all lose that knowledge. And my great grandmother would never have admitted to having any Native American blood. She would have fought anyone who said, I've told you how feisty she was. But she used Lumbee words that are only part of their language, such as Ellic. That's spelled Elliac, and it usually means a cup of coffee. That's somehow they got that word, probably originated some kind of tea. She'd say a cup of Ellic. So did my great aunt and several of my supposedly non-Native American relatives. And, the other one was Mommick, Mommick. Now that is an interesting word because it's also used by the high tiders up around the Outer Banks. You see, most people believe that the Lumbee tribe is a result of the lost colony of Sir Walter Raleigh mixing in with the Croatan and eventually several other tribes over, mostly Catawban tribes, to form what is now known as the Lumbee tribe. And so one of the main ways we know that is because they have last names like Hunt and Locklear and such as that, which are English names. And they use an old-fashioned word that probably has its roots in either an older version of English or Gaelic, like mommick, which means to screw something up, to really mess it up. If you mommick it up, you're in trouble. So I hope I got through this herb without mommicking it up, because my great-grandmother wouldn't forgive me for that. So y'all have a good one, and I will talk with you next week.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.